just a hack. He's just an absolute hack. And he gets his ass kicked by his teammates every week. It's just, it's terrible. It's just terrible.
Welcome back to another episode of the Believe in NFL Draft Prospects podcast. It's been a multi-week hiatus, but we're trying to get back into it. We've got some interviews that are going to be dropping over the next couple of weeks. Ryan has done a fantastic job of getting those in. I'm Joe DeLeone here with NFL draft analyst Ryan Roberts. Ryan, how are we doing today?
I'm good, Joe. I'm so happy that you can make time for me today, man. It's a pleasure.
Stop it.
It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure to see you.
It's not like I'm not making time for you, man. We're also recording the first team, which is going to air on Stadium this week.
That's exciting. It's exciting. Luckily, Matt Sims is on it, so he could be the good-looking guy on the three of us. So
yeah, who would have thought our two ugly faces would have been put on TV? But yet here we are.
I've been told many times in my life that I have a face for radio, so I'm excited to get on the big screen, man.
Well, all those terrible people can suck it now that we've officially. I'm taking a victory lap this week, and it's what better way to celebrate than hopping on and talking about draft prospects.
Joe, I told my mother-in-law that we were going to be on Stadium, and she said, this is a direct quote, to talk about football? Like, yeah. People listen to football, believe it or not. But,
did she know what Stadium was?
I think so. I think she did. Yeah.
What else would we be on there for?
I don't know. Channel. She finds it so weird that I make a living off of football, so it's pretty hysterical.
I think, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, not at all.
Well, we continue to defy the odds, Ryan. And today we're going to talk about some guys that have defied the odds and starting to rise up over the month of September. Good kind of check-in. So we took the past couple of weeks off because we've been trying to launch the first team show and had a lot of other things on our collective plates. But it kind of allows us to take instead of a week-by-week look, a grand look at the scope of these prospects. And we've got two that are creating buzz, one that I want to have like a reality check on because everyone's freaking out about. But before we get to them, I want to tell you folks about Bet Online. Football is back. Bet Online remains your number one source for all of your football betting needs this season. You'll find the latest odds, matchup info, player news, and game trends. And your continued source for all of your sports wagering info. Bet Online features live betting, free contests, live scores, and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on your favorite sports and events like MLB, MMA, tennis, boxing, and even golf. Head to betonline.ag to join and receive your 100% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BELIEVE to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, Ryan. Let's talk about the two positive guys first. So,
yep.
The one that you texted me about was Olu Fashanu, who is the Ohio State offensive lineman, or not Penn State offensive lineman. Sorry, Big Ten team that's ranked. It's the same difference. I hope I'm correctly pronouncing that, but how do you think it is pronounced?
Olu Fashanu.
Olu Fashanu. Do you know that for sure? Or are you?
Yes, I know that for sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Did you personally ask him?
I know somebody. I know somebody in the Penn State recruiting office. So I've talked to him about Olu in the past.
So Olu Fashanu is a part of a surging Penn State team. Now there is speculation that Penn State maybe crashes down to reality once they have a little bit more of a difficult schedule, but they're playing better than I think a lot of people have expected. And what has propelled this team is their offensive line play and their run game, and Sean Clifford not having to do a whole lot, not having to be pressured. Shocking how good your team can play when Sean Clifford isn't, forced to do too much. But Olu Fashanu has been, a real bright spot. And I keep seeing, the many smaller draft analysts that tweet out clips and such, tweeting about him. So you texted me that you wanted to talk about him. What has brought him to your attention so far? Because he's a big dude and he looks fantastic so far this season.
Shout out to Corey Cannon on this one, Joe. He was the first person that I know of that talked about Olu, and he actually started, I believe, the last game of last season at the bowl game, and then he obviously with Rasheed Walker graduating into the NFL, he has now taken over the full job as the left tackle. I mean, to be very honest, man, some of the rarest core strength that I think I've ever seen. Like, he can just stall dudes at the point of attack as a pass rusher. This kid is 6'6", 320 pounds, and it's just a great looking 320 pounds, man. Long, strong, good feet. Everything is working there for an Olu Fashanu, because we know left tackle is the most paramount spot, is to be a great pass protector. And that's what Olu Fashanu is. He needs work in the run game. It's not all the way there. But Joe, when you kind of like pull back the curtain or peel the layers of this onion for an Olu Fashanu, there's an interesting backstory. And I think that's why we need to talk about him. Is he was originally from, I think his family's originally from Nigeria. He came over, didn't play high school football until I think his junior year of high school. Mm-hmm. Still managed to get an offer, obviously, to Penn State amongst other schools. Now, as a redshirt sophomore, he is eligible for this year's draft. And I'm here to tell you this. There is a possibility, because Peter Skoronski's been good. Paris Johnson's taking a step up, but there's still some uncertainty as far as what the pecking order of offensive tackle looks like. There is a real world where Olu Fashanu is the first offensive tackle off the board, Joe. I'm going to put that in this universe. There is. I actually talked to a scout 2 days ago who asked me if I had seen him yet, and he said, yeah, the dude's he's going to be a guy. He's going to be a guy in next year's class if he comes out. Only 19 years old. He does not turn 20 until December.
He's 19 and he's a redshirt sophomore?
Doesn't turn 20 until December. We have his date on the database. He is 19 years old right now, Joe. And I'm told directly by someone from Penn State that helped recruit him that my guy at 320 pounds has a six-pack. So, yeah.
So we've got Evan Neal shades, is what you're saying with Fashanu, who was projected as the first tackle last year, didn't go first. But he's kind of in that same vein of like freaky athlete, freaky build for a guy of his size.
Just freaky core strength, man. Like, it made so much sense when he told me that he had a six-pack, because like, that's a weird note. But like, when you see the core strength that he plays with, you're like, oh, that makes sense. I mean, the kid's like a tree trunk, man. Like, he just does not move off of his spot. So I'm told that he's going to test really well. He's a young kid. He's only started, what are we in, game? We just finished up game 4 or 5, depending on what your team is, right? So, I mean, he has started literally like 5 or 6 football games in his career. But it's so exciting because he's young, he's athletic, he's long, and it's already there in pass protection wise. So, I mean, everything's there, man. He is a big riser in the offensive tackle group, and there is a reality where Olu Fashanu rides the momentum, potentially to be the first offensive tackle off the board next April. It's very possible.
I completely forgot what I was just going to say about Fashanu. So you said that is the tree trunk your comp for him? Or is
yes. You can't get it. Once he digs in, Joe, you can't get him out of the ground, man.
What would the comp be if you actually had to give one? Or you use it too early?
It's probably a little too early. I mean, pick your offensive tackle that has incredible core strength. Like, who are we thinking about? Trent Williams? Like, no, I don't want to compare anybody to Trent Williams. That would not be fair to him.
Is Evan Neal the easy one to do?
Evan Neal's decent. I actually think that he's a little more flexible than Evan was, though. Now, but like, Evan was longer. Evan was more explosive. Like, Evan was a freak of nature, but he might be more flexible than Evan Neal even was. So I don't know if I have a great comp yet. I'll think on that one, though. There's got to be somebody out there that's pretty good.
The second guy that you wanted to bring up is on another surging team, albeit they have already crashed down to reality after they lost to UCLA. Washington has had a really good defense. Michael Penix has been brought up as a name that is apparently now on some NFL radars, which I know that you are going to hate. But Bralen Trice on that defense has been the lead guy as an edge rusher. That team defensively had put up some really good performances, and I point directly to especially that Michigan State game, which is a good opponent. That's a very highly competitive opponent to go against and to play the way that they did. Watching Trice for Washington, and I know Washington has put out a couple of good guys lately. What attracted you to him that you wanted to bring him up over September?
He's got an interesting profile, Joe, because I mean, he plays on a defensive line. He has Jeremiah Martin at defensive end, who I think was a former Texas A&M transfer, number 3. And then they have ZTF, Zion, however you pronounce his last name, the hyphenated name, who was highly touted. And then last year got hurt, was injured, missed majority of the season after a torn Achilles, comes back and he's still getting a little bit of fanfare. But this Trice kid's better than all of them. He's better than ZTF. He is the best edge rusher on this Washington team, in my opinion. You look at his profile, his recruiting background, he was only like a 3-star recruit. He wasn't like this crazy recruiting ranking guy, even though I know for a fact that Notre Dame wanted Bralen Trice in the worst possible ways, man. Like he was
He picked Washington.
Yes, he picked Washington. He's got to be a West Coast kid, right? I don't even have it in front of me, but let's look this up real quick. He's got to be like a California or Washington kid, or
right.
So he's from Phoenix, Arizona. So yeah, he's a West Coast guy. So, but Joe, this kid. So number 8 is Bralen Trice on the defense. So far, I think he has 7 tackles for loss, 4.5 sacks. So he's been very productive so far this season. 6'4", 269 pounds, well put together kid. Actually had some flashes last year in the 2021 season. He is a 3rd-year player, redshirt sophomore. Actually, he might be a 4th-year player, but this is only his 2nd year of playing time. So he's technically a redshirt sophomore because he had a redshirt and then he had the COVID year. So he's 2nd year. He's a 4th-year player, but he's got 2nd-year eligibility, which means he is technically a possible entry into the 2023 NFL draft if he chooses. And I've been talking a lot with Corey Kinnan about this one. I think that this kid could be a top 50 pick. Like, I think that he's that talented. He is that talented. 6'4", 269, good body, looks the part, really, really good hands, man. And he has a plan of attack. And I wouldn't call him the bendiest guy of all time, but I think his ankles are flexible enough. And he just knows how to get his body tilted in the right position, man. Like, he's a Nick Bosa style of rusher, not comparing him to Nick Bosa, but Nick Bosa wasn't the bendiest guy ever, but he got his lower body aligned to the quarterback and was able to still reduce rush angles. That's the biggest thing with Bralen Trice, is that he can reduce rush angles, man, and he is a winner with great hands and good footwork. So I'm in on Bralen Trice, man, in on him. He's been one of the biggest eye-openers for me because I didn't know much about him before the season, to be honest. Like, I knew him from his recruiting background, but I didn't know much about him from a football playing perspective for Washington, and he has had a big start to the season so far.
It's going to be tricky for a guy like Trice, I will say, though, to like crack his way into the top of the edge class. Because we talked about this a while ago. Like, this is a good edge class. Like, there's a lot of guys that are going to go top 50. So for him to fit into that mix, it's a little bit of an uphill battle, but it's certainly on the table, it sounds like, from what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, I'm looking at the edge list right now. Like, I mean, if we're talking about, he's not going to go over Will Anderson, obviously. Miles Murphy, no, he's not going to go over Miles Murphy. Isaiah Foskey's been uneven so far for Notre Dame. He's been good in spurts. He's been average in other spurts. I'm not saying that Bralen Trice is going to go higher than Isaiah Foskey. I don't believe that. But all I'm saying is that it's a conversation, actually. Like, you're starting to have a conversation. I would take him before Nolan Smith from Georgia. I personally would. Some people probably would not. So the question now is he the 5th defensive end? Is he the 6th? Is he 7th? Because then you have guys like Tyree Wilson from Texas A&M. From Texas Tech. He was transferred from Texas A&M. Talented football player. Will McDonald from Iowa State, more of a lightly built stand-up rusher. You have guys like Andre Carter from Army, a little bit of the same. Jared Verse is a kid that we also could have talked about today, who's been dynamic for Florida State, the transfer from Albany, who I know has been dealing with an injury over the last couple games, but I mean, his LSU tape was some of the best that I've seen over the last couple years. So I do think it's a little wide open after the top 2 or 3, though. I think that Bralen Trice has an opportunity. If he continues the momentum throughout the year, he could be a guy that we're exclusively using in 2nd and 3rd round mock drafts before April comes around.
So the last guy that I want to bring up, Ryan, is somebody who very recently has actually been mocked as a 1st overall pick. And I'm talking about Will Levis.
That ESPN? Was that ESPN?
I forget, but it might have been CBS, but
it was CBS. You're right.
He keeps getting, Will Levis from Kentucky, their starting quarterback, keeps getting discussed as a 1st-round top 10 pick. And that was what the speculation was before the season. But somehow, oddly enough, his draft stock has improved. And I was watching the Kentucky Ole Miss game, and Todd McShay, they cut to him on the sideline, and he was talking about how, the scouts really love his personality, and he's a leader type guy, and he's a team first guy, and he's the guy that you want in the locker room, and like all that stuff is leading some teams to prioritize him as quarterback one in this upcoming class. And with any draft class, especially after a down year quarterback, this stuff is going to get talked about a lot. And I have to say, Ryan, having watched Will Levis so far and getting to see him so far this season, I'm not saying I'm out on him, but I don't think that the sudden justified draft stock increase is there. It doesn't make sense to me because I've watched him in these games against Florida and also against Ole Miss where he's just making silly mistakes. And he's also hasn't put up like a really good statistical performance. And I know that stats don't mean everything in draft projection, but like his completion percentage is crap. His QBR is crap. He's turning the ball over a lot. His decision-making is really head-scratching, and that has always been the issue. And I point to the most recent one that happened, and I talked about this on my live stream, the Ole Miss game where at the very end of the game, like he doesn't sense pressure that's right in his face. He doesn't hang on to the football. He gives up a fumble that cost them a game after they drove down and almost won the game. And those types of plays, I don't know if I'm willing to take a guy like that in the top 15. He's got the traits, but I'm yet to see a win because of quarterback. That's not what I get with him. I get shades of Daniel Jones, who's, I think Will Levis is a better prospect athletically, but the same thing with Daniel Jones, where like if Daniel had the right instincts between his ears, he'd be a much better quarterback because he's got the traits. He's a good athlete. The arm is there, but he just doesn't have the instincts. And I'm not seeing any of that with Will Levis. I'm seeing the same crap where just turnover prone and head scratching decisions.
Has he been better this year than he was last year? Like that's where I start with.
He's stagnant.
Right?
He's very stagnant.
Yeah. And that's troublesome to me, Joe, because I was excited about Will Levis. I was like very like hesitant on Will Levis, but also excited about him in the summer because I'm like, I could see it. Like, right, like he's 6'3", 230 pounds, good athlete, cannon for an arm, silly flexibility in his upper half. Like, cool, man. I can get there. I can get there with him. But the problem is that he only started 1 year last year, and you're like, okay, he's going to progress, like easy maturation, right? He's only started for 1 year. Sure. Well, now we're in year 2, and there really hasn't been a exponential climb yet, right? Like there hasn't been it. And then that gets you worried because also Will Levis is going to be a 24-year-old rookie, right? So you're getting into this gray area of, yes, he hasn't played a ton of football, but also his age isn't lining up with the lack of experience either. So if he doesn't start progressing in the second half of the season, I'm going to question how much he'll be able to take a step forward at the next level. I will make that question because there's always going to be some things that you can point to. Wan'Dale Robinson's not with the program anymore, right? The offensive line had a massive rebuild over this offseason. You lost both your starting offensive tackles. Like, I get it.
Yeah, and their offensive line's been a mess. They've given up like some of the most interior rushes. Like their guards are not good, which is something he can't control.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so things around him aren't perfect, all that being said, but still, I don't think that you're seeing the growth from a processing perspective, right? Like, I don't think it's all just bad around him, and that's the reason he's struggling. It's not like he's putting dimes on dudes and they're just dropping the football, right? Like, that's not the case. He's making some bonehead decisions, holding the ball too long, doing things like that. And I hope that it kind of gets remedied a little bit in the second half of the season, because again, is he a first-round level talent? For sure. Yeah, like, for sure. No one doubts that. But I think that we can have the same conversation about Anthony Richardson right now, right? Anthony Richardson just isn't that guy yet. They're just not that yet.
I honestly, and I don't know if you are going to like this or not, Ryan. I would take Anthony Richardson over Will Levis right now because I've at least watched Anthony Richardson. He is so freaking volatile. It's either really freaking good or really freaking bad. And when he's really good, he takes over games. He did it against Tennessee and he did it against Utah. He's capable of doing that. And I know that and he's younger, you give him a little time, and I think you can maybe tap into that and get that type of a player. I haven't seen Will Levis do that once.
Yeah. Joe, I think there's two outcomes with the Will Levis, right? One, the guy that everyone's going to point to is Josh Allen. And I hate the comp because Josh Allen physically is about as gifted a quarterback as we've ever seen come out of college. Like, just a stupid talent. And he landed in the perfect situation. But if Will Levis does land in a perfect situation, I don't think he's like helpless. Like, I think that there's a possibility that he could be that guy. Now, again, not Josh Allen, but like a guy. But then the other one, Joe, and I made this comp on Twitter like last week. He reminds me a lot of Jake Locker, man. He does. And I just can't get that out of my mind because a lot of the same issues Jake had are what Will is struggling with right now. Lack of ability to change arm speeds, bad reads. It's just there's a mechanical nature to Will Levis right now that scares the hell out of me.
The only reason why I push back, the rest of those things that you pointed out are correct. The only reason why I don't like the Jake Locker comp is because Jake Locker didn't give a shit, and he retired early because he didn't care.
Like, did he get hurt? Was he getting hurt though?
No,
is that why he retired?
He was getting hurt, but like how many guys have we seen battle through injuries and just keep playing because they love football? Like
here we go. Joe's back to the love of football thing, right? You gotta play through it.
But it's no. But it's a good point that like I think a lot of people could agree. Like if you had a conversation with Jake Locker, like that was the sentiment. It was like Josh Rosen-esque where he didn't really care. Like he was just there because he was talented and he was getting offered a contract and he was going to get drafted early and he would have bounced around as long as he needed to if he was paying bills and he could get that salary. But like I think at least I got to give Will Levis the benefit of the doubt. I think he has the desire to be good and has the desire to like lead his team. And there's a reason why the character stuff has been brought up a million times. Like this is a great locker room guy. He's like the shit that you hear on all these
talk of all time.
Right. It's just like the most like not baseless, but it's just such a lazy, like just random fact to throw in there.
I mean, because it matters, but like that shouldn't be what you have to lead with, right? Like that shouldn't be what you have to lead with. That usually
means that he's struggling and that like he's not playing up to the quality of play that he should be. But
exactly.
But like I don't want to call him Locker because I think he cares a little bit more. But I do agree that the talent is there, but the inability to properly use it is comparable to Jake Locker.
Yeah. It's. I just think that he's a very volatile kid, man, and it's scary, Joe. Like honestly, he's the type of player. I'll tell you what I ultimately think about him when I see where he gets drafted to. I'll be honest, man. And like some players. Like no matter where Trevor Lawrence got drafted to, I would have felt that he could make the best of a bad situation, right? Bad situation, good situation. I think he could have came out on the other side. Will Levis is not a guy, and that's no pushback against his want to, right? Like his urgency to be great. That's not. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is that you need a offensive coordinator and a head coach and a culture around Will Levis that accentuates him and lets him be great. And if he doesn't, then he's going to fail.
The only team that I see that fits that, where like I also would add in there, they need to have a good offensive line. They need to have a good run game. That he doesn't need to do everything in his first year, and that's going to stunt his development. The Lions are the only team that makes sense. The only team that makes sense. Because you talk about culture, like he fits like that hard nosed, like he seems like a Dan Campbell guy.
He does seem like a Dan Campbell guy. You know what team I would love to see him on, but it will never happen now with what happened last draft? I would love to see him with the Steelers. I would, man. I would love to see him in Pittsburgh. I think he fits that just.
If only they drafted Kenyon Green or someone like a good or Tyler Linderbaum.
Yeah,
instead of Kenny Pickett.
Such an easy pick, man. It was such an easy pick. See, I'm not trying to shit on Kenny Pickett for a second, but like, did you see he threw 3 interceptions in his first game?
Dude, there are so many apologists. I made it. We'll wrap with this. I made like a TikTok and I put it on the YouTube channel and our Instagram channel and our Instagram account, and it got like a few thousand views on each. And the amount of apologists for that kid. That first throw that he had, that pick, everyone was like, oh, well, if Claypool caught it, that we wouldn't be talking about it. He threw into double coverage. Like, that's not supposed to be something that, like, we're supposed to be excusing. Like, there's probably, if you pulled up the film, there's probably someone who's a lot more wide open on that play. I'm not like, I've never been in on Kenny Pickett, so it's not like I'm suddenly out on him. But 2 years, they're going to be drafting somebody else.
I think so. I mean, because that was what was so flawed with that draft class, Joe. I mean, you remember when I talked about it? I was like, there was a point where I got in on Kenny Pickett because I'm like, okay, because I was completely out on Kenny Pickett before the season, and then like halfway through, I'm like, cool, day 2 quarterback, 3rd round, I can get there with Kenny Pickett for sure. And then he vaults into a top 20 pick. It's just like, no, man, no, he was never that. You set the kid up for failure, and it stinks for him. Set him up for failure.
and he's gonna be he's gonna be the guy that everyone dick rides because he's just like, oh, he's from Pittsburgh and he seems like such a great guy, but like it's not very good.
Yes.
Be honest with ourselves.
Yeah.
All right, folks, thank you for tuning in at Joe DeLeone at Rise and Draft. NFL Draft Prospects Pod presented by Bet Online. Interview that might drop this week. Also check out the first team. Y'all know the drill, and we're gonna get into a better schedule. That's all we're gonna promise. That's all we have. All right, enjoy the rest of your week, everyone.